Good morning y buenos días, everyone. How are we feeling? Are we fired up? Are we fired up for today's program? Y'all did not have your café con leche, or it has not hit just yet, but it's okay because we have an incredible program lined up with some great energy and speakers. Just out of curiosity, anybody take advantage of the karaoke last night? Okay, see, these are the bold and the brave that are ready to admit that, yes, they did that. But I saw a lot of people at the bar watching the game, some people that are tracking the NCAA tournament. Okay, don't start nothing. Don't start nothing here. I was backstage and Michael Mo told me that there are about 140 countries that are represented here, people that came from all those. We have a lot of representation from China, from India. I was at the bookstore and met someone from Panama, from Argentina. Are there any other countries represented here that you want to just call? Mexico? All right. Australia. Okay, wonderful. Austria, perdón, I'm sorry. Like she didn't hear that right. Well, to everyone who is here, welcome to day 2 of the summit. All right, we have a wonderful conversation lined up, a fireside chat. Moderating the fireside chat is someone who needs no introduction at all, Michael Mo. He'll be in conversation with someone whose prominence is gigantic, Sarah Friar of OpenAI. And let's woo it up for ChatGPT, okay? I was just backstage using it, saying, hey, ChatGPT, I've got to MC this session, and if the crowd is low energy, what kind of prompts should I give them? And I told Sarah that, and she said, ooh, let me see what it said. So if you see me using them on you, you know why, okay? Later on. All right, wonderful. Sarah brings a powerful mix of leadership experience and purpose-driven spirit and insight to this moment, and together they'll explore what it means to build an economy where AI serves people, not the other way around. Let's welcome to the stage Sarah and Michael.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Wow, big room.
So this is going to be a real treat for us. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So Sarah, you've got quite a career in technology and the investment world as well. But now you're the CFO of arguably the most important technology company in the world. What in the world are you doing at an education conference? And what role do you see OpenAI playing in this ecosystem?
Sure. Well, I'm actually at the most important conference, literally.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yeah. The most important. Because you are all both shaping the future and hopefully shaping the future alongside new technology like AI. So I can't think of a better room, frankly, to be having a conversation with. Unfortunately, I can't take in all your feedback, but we appreciate your feedback. So keep it coming in through any channel that you can. But you really are shaping the future, whether it's our youngest starting their journey in education. But a point I was trying to make last night, that education is not something we should think about finishing in our 20s, if we're lucky enough that we got to tertiary education. But today, the world is changing so fast that we need to think about education almost in every decade of our lives as a continuous journey. So thank you all for your interest and your time here today.
So Sarah, you were a software analyst at Goldman Sachs. You were the head of finance and strategy at Square. And then you're the CEO of Nextdoor, which is a very cool social media business. But what lured you to come to OpenAI, and what was sort of the, you've had some pretty important roles, but here you are. So what brought you here?
Yeah, this one was a hard one to turn down because you're right at the crucible of what's happening in the world today. And who doesn't want to take that seat, to be at the table? So that was number one. I'm super curious by nature. It's kind of been a core, my husband might say it's my fatal flaw, but I would say it's a key character trait, the curiosity gene. I've always been fascinated by technology, but I also felt it was important to have diversity around the table when these decisions are being made about technology that's going to shape our futures. And so I wanted to be a part of that. Also felt, look, AI today, where are we? We began, people have been talking about AI for decades and decades. This journey has been a long one. But if you look back to November of 22, when ChatGPT kind of burst on the scene, it was this moment where I think consumers really recognized, oh, I kind of could see what maybe this is. Now at the time, ChatGPT 3.0, maybe 3.5, was a lot like talking more to a grade schooler, maybe even just a primary school kid, frankly. Today, ChatGPT 4.5 is like talking to a very sophisticated PhD student in physics, math, chemistry, biology, superb at creative writing, amazing coder, the 175th best competitive coder in the world. My team assures me that the O series, our reasoning series, is now the best competitive coder in the world. So it's just incredible how fast this technology has happened, and that speed is just accelerating. So I wanted to be able to come to get that front row seat, to be able to shape the journey, but also to work with folks like all of you to tell some of the story and bring everybody along on this journey, because it is going to be an amplifier and an augmenter when used well, and that comes back to why education is so important right now.
So, how many of you are on the Nextdoor community?
That is awesome to see.
If I had more time, I'd tell you a great Nextdoor story, but we don't. But at Nextdoor, the focus on how kind of community and human connection, how is that experience influencing you, how you think about OpenAI and what you can create there?
Yeah. So to me, community has been really important throughout my life. I'll take a little sidebar. I grew up in Northern Ireland. I grew up during the Troubles. It's a pretty tough time. Frankly, education and community were kind of two really important paths. I'll go to community first. My mom was the local nurse. My dad was the personnel manager of the local mill. And they were community. Like, they were kind of next door before next door could be a thing, because the internet didn't exist. Because every night, someone would knock on our back door, and it would be either someone in need of medical help, because my mom was the local nurse, so if you were having a baby, you probably weren't knocking on the door, but probably someone was coming to tell my mom, who was the midwife, the baby was on the way. But any sort of medical emergency, she was your port of call first. Or if you needed a job, if you had money problems, if you just needed a word of advice, my dad was the man to talk to. And so I really saw how the importance of community, even in kind of the toughest times, right? We had a community kind of riven by religious differences. If I take that to education, what did that mean for me growing up in that little community? Education was everything. It was the way to satisfy the curiosity gene. It was the place that was shelter. Going to like the local library was a moment of reprise often when, times were tough, like bombs went off in our village and stuff. It's madness. But it was also, I hate to put it this way, a way out from a very poor community. And so when I found my way out through education, it's always made me want to give back. And so when I think about what I learned at Nextdoor, that kind of power of community when it's done well, and by the way, when it's not done well, it is the most frustrating thing on the planet. As many of you know, I'm sure you both love and sometimes don't love your neighbors. It makes me think a lot about how do we bring together this human plus agentic world to think about it more as a force multiplier together, rather than a world where we fear something about AI, right? It's going to take over the world or whatever. But instead, how do we think about the AI native generations that are now kind of growing up, and how are they going to use this technology for good in the world, whether it's medical breakthroughs, new drug discoveries. I mean, it's wild what's happening already. Whether it's areas like education, right? The thing that we can do with technology today is deeply personalize it. So the dream that we've all had about every single child having a tutor that works exactly for them, it's actually here today. We don't have it widely distributed in the world, but the future is here right now. This is a thing. However you learn, if you're a verbal learner, if you're a visual learner, if you prefer auditory, right, you can have that. I watched my own kids using ChatGPT from, my daughter's in college, so she was a little afraid for the longest time that it was going to be cheating. And now when she talks to me about, getting stuck on a PSET, she's a chemistry major, and just being really fast able to ask ChatGPT, how would she approach a problem, or how would they solve this problem? She's like, Mom, it's not cheating, because I still have to go sit midterms and finals, so I still need to know the stuff. But instead of waiting until Monday morning or whenever my TA is available or my professor is available, I can keep going, so I stay in my flow. And sometimes I ask it to explain it to me like I'm a middle schooler, and then to explain it to me like I'm a high schooler, and now explain it to me like I'm a sophomore. And she's like, just watching it explain the same concept, but over kind of over a course. She's like, that's the light bulb moment. And she's like, sometimes ChatGPT explains things different from my TA, but in a way that actually works better for me. So it's a long way to say, I think learning about community, really believing in the importance of community, but now thinking about how we bring technology and community together, it's really important to me. It's kind of what brought me to OpenAI.
That's awesome. My favorite feature is I always ask it to explain to me like I'm a 6-year-old. It's perfect for me, but it works really well.
In finance, one of my pet peeves is if any, man says to you, let's talk about finance. I know immediately I'm not going to understand anything they say because they're going to use every three-letter acronym on the planet. And now I just sit there with my ChatGPT and I'm like, oh, okay, let's really get into that. And so it's wonderful as a great leveler.
But again, I think what is totally, speeding up the feedback loop, we talked about it last night, is this compression of time. So you don't have to wait till the next day or next week to get unstuck from an issue. You got that help right now when you need it.
Yeah.
So put your analyst hat on for a second. And you were a great research analyst. So what are the maybe 3 trends for AI that you see happening next 12 months that are most important?
Yeah, so I started talking a little bit about where we've been. So ChatGPT breaks on the scene, and we get this first look at GPT models. So really fast call and response. What really was, at that point in time, the research was showing is the more compute, with more data, with a smart algorithm, we're on a scaling law that just meant more intelligence. And that scaling law still holds. So that continues. However, last year, so that was only really 2023, which is bonkers. Last year, 2024, our researchers really discovered this idea of reasoning models. So we call them our O series of models. So this moves from system 1 to system 2 type thinking. And so now what you see the model able to do is it effectively thinks much more the way we do as humans. So my example is always if it was doing a crossword puzzle, right, the way we would, it would be 1 across, 5 letters, probably 3 words I think it could be. So I'm going to write in with a pencil the first idea. And then I'm going to go to 1 down. Oh, I know what that is. And it starts with an A. So that means that 1 across now has a second letter that's an A. So my first guess is incorrect. So I need to go erase and go back and re-look at that. So that's what the reasoning model is doing. It's actually able to double back on itself when it hits a cul-de-sac and says, oh, that's not going to get me to the right answer. So last year was all about reasoning. This year is all about agents. So you needed that reasoning capability to now be able to have an agent that can go out there and do something on your behalf. And so really we're just starting to see the play out of just task workers in the world. Each one of you can have someone kind of working for you in the back end while you're going about your day. Because that agent opens up a browser, and anything that has a website, it can go do that job for you. It might be booking a restaurant, it might be booking travel, it might be filling in an insurance form. Like whatever you would normally do on a website, Operator, which is our agent, can do for you. The next agent is deep research, and I think this is mind-blowing. It is literally the best product I have ever experienced in my professional career. Now, I was a research analyst, so I'm a biased sample.
All right,
But
great.
the idea that I kind of said I have the curiosity bug. You all in this room must have the curiosity bug, otherwise you wouldn't do the jobs you do. But just to be able to send an analyst off to go whatever it is, like how could I think creatively about GPU financing? These are the sort of interesting deep research projects I do. But my sister-in-law is about to take a sabbatical, and she was like, I wanted to do deep research on what sabbatical I could do for a 3-month travel. And off it goes. And you can use it today in Plus and Pro, and very soon we're going to bring it to our free base. And it effectively usually takes 15-ish minutes. It'll go look at maybe 30, 40 sources, something that would take you hours, maybe weeks to do. And you can treat it like an employee, like an analyst. So if you're creating a lesson plan, or you're thinking about, like, how would I curve my students, like, whatever is top of mind for you as an educator, it can go off and do a lot of that for you in the back end while you're doing what you do. Maybe it's just teaching, like in a classroom. So that's the second agentic technology. The third that we're spending a lot of time is agentic software development. And it's that we're not quite ready to release into the world. Today there's already an augmentation of software developers, but we're really thinking about how do we create a new, like almost like a newly minted software engineer out of an MIT or Stanford or ASU or Georgia Tech, wherever you are, or globally. But the world of agents is right here with us now. And so then where does that take us, which is maybe next year, maybe it's more like 24 months out. I think we are going to start to see, and we may already be seeing, novel scientific discoveries. Theorems that have never been proven by a human yet, being proven by an agent. This is not the world of kind of sci-fi. We have heard from a number of, really the best and the brightest right on the edge of frontier research say, I think it might have discovered something novel, but I actually don't know because I need to go away now and prove that the thing that deep research brought me or the model brought me is new and is right. And so I think we are actually shifting into that world already. So for all of you, kind of particularly in the university setting, where you have graduates, PhD levels, and so on, I think they're now pushing that border of science. I mean, there's a reason why the national labs in the United States use our models from OpenAI, deeply firewalled, but are using it for frontier research right now.
So from the seat that you have, how fast is AI changing the global economy?
Yeah, it's AI itself is moving so fast. So we have just, if you look at ChatGPT 3 to ChatGPT 4, that was about 2-ish years of model development. Our O series, our reasoning model, O1 to O3, took about 3 months. And so just the pace of change is unbelievable. And it's being fueled by the pace of the effectively Moore's law on steroids that's happening with AI infrastructure. So I was talking last night to a group saying on our APIs that many of you use in your university and education settings, the cost of our 4.0 model, which is kind of our workhorse API, down to our fully distilled 4.0 mini model, that cost curve came down 99% in about 12 months. I have never seen anything like that. I can't even almost even understand a cost curve that comes down by 99%. So what that means is, Jevons paradox, kind of the most overused term in my circles these days, that the more that is available, the more people are going to be using it. And so that speed is what you all are contending with. Now, what's happening in the actual economy? It is, we see some sectors, some companies, even some countries move very, very fast. Right? I'll stay kind of in education for right now, but ASU, right where we are, 181,000 seats of ChatGPT deployed wall to wall throughout the university for students, for educators, for researchers. Cal State universities just deployed 500,000 seats across all of their entities. We just launched something called NextGen, which is really more about research, but that's trying to bring in more universities around the world. Like my alma mater, Oxford, joined that grouping and is actually now pulling, I love this, data out of the Bodleian Library to be digitized and used in model development. So they have dissertations from, I think, 1498. I'm dying to know what dissertation people were doing in 1498.
I wasn't there, just to be clear.
These days I feel like I might have been there. I might have been writing it. And then the government of Estonia just did a deployment across all secondary school pupils in the country. And so what we are seeing is that, you asked about the impact on productivity, we are definitely now starting to see these kind of shifts ahead. And companies that are early adopters are starting to kind of create, I think, real competitive advantage. I'll give you one more for-profit example, but I like it because it talks to multimodal. So Grab, which is a really big company in Southeast Asia, right? They are kind of the delivery if you order food. Grab is an amazing super app. They use our model to grab, pardon the pun, visual data. So they have these moped drivers all over Southeast Asian cities, about 12 million gig workers. They capture more metadata on video than even Google Maps does in a year in those same cities. And what they're doing is creating their own map. And it's not just a map of like how to get from A to a customer. It's a map that shows when is the lanes going to go from 3 to 2. So if I'm on my moped, I need to be safe. When is there going to be a traffic speed camera? When is there going to be a traffic light? And when I get to that customer site, where's the moped parking? Because the faster I can go park and run upstairs to deliver my food, the better the food experience is for the customer. They got it faster, it was probably warmer. The better the experience is for the gig worker, because they didn't have to cycle around the block looking for parking. The more deliveries they can make per hour, which is great for Grab's gross margin. And overall, you just have this very virtuous cycle happening in this for-profit company. And so I give you a lot of education examples, and I think it's driving new education outcomes. But I think in the for-profit sectors, we're already starting to see really big impacts into corporate outcomes too.
So Sarah, we're running out of time, but I got 2 questions I got to ask you before we get off stage. First of all, in Titus in, so Stargate, gigantic, incredibly ambitious project. Just touch on what that is. And what if we started to treat education as a priority? What does that unlock?
Yeah, Stargate's super fast. For this audience, like the punchline you need to know is we need to build more AI infrastructure, particularly here in the United States, but just broad-based, to make sure that, as I said, those scaling laws stay intact, so that if it's pre-training, post-training, or test times while you're using the product, that we're continuing to build more intelligence. And so we announced with President Trump a $500 billion investment into AI data centers. The first 100 billion will get us our first 2 gigawatts, which in some ways I think we're going to look back on and feel like that was small. The full 500 billion will get us 10 gigawatts. And for comparison, Ireland, so kind of, I'm sometimes Irish, sometimes British, Northern Ireland, I can play it both ways.
I thought you were Texan. Go ahead.
Uses about 7 gigawatts of power per year. So we're talking about more power than a country. Now that brings a lot of other things to the fore, like how do we think about climate change and the impact from all this power usage. And again, this is where I think AI is going to be a big part of helping us solve some of these problems, like really investing in areas like nuclear fission, for example. And then, for this audience, your second question was, what if we really invested in education? We are really investing in education. Those billions of dollars I just talked about, they are creating tools that you all can use today. And if you're not using ChatGPT, and again, I'm not up here to, well, I am a little up here to sell my own product because I do care that my company is successful, so I don't want to be disingenuous, but it's more like use the tools of AI. Because what I find is whether it's very small things in my life, from a fast way to reply to an email. I have a custom GPT that I've trained that talks like me, which I realize is a scary thought, but it uses podcasts I've been on or speaking remarks that my comms team has created for me. And so when I give it an email to reply to or a Slack message to reply to, it like replies like I do. And just saving those couple of minutes, but it's actually just the too many decisions in one day wears you out. Just saving that time, I find, leaves me a lot fresher for like the hard intellectual stuff, but the stuff I really enjoy. And I would think in all your jobs, There's the stuff you really, really enjoy, which you should keep doing. And then there's the stuff you actually hate, like all of the bureaucracy, all the forms you fill in, all that stuff, where it can really speed you up. It's true in education, it's true in medicine, it's true in research, on and on. So I hope that when you leave after a summit like this, you feel excited, you feel inspired, you give it a go, and you talk to the people around you, because the best learning I've always found at a summit like this is listening to my peers and then taking those ideas home and getting everybody else excited when I get back to the ranch.
I got to ask you one more question. We've got over 1,000 ed tech entrepreneurs here. OpenAI, is it open for business? How can they interact with you?
Yes, we are very, very much open for business. So first of all, we do a lot to welcome in the entrepreneurs and the creators. Of course, there's our API that is available to all, and we're trying to make sure we keep pricing that API closer and closer to just cost so that you all get maximum access. I should have said our mission is AGI for the benefit of all of humanity. You are our force multipliers, because no company on earth can do it all. You only do it with your community, and this is our community. And so please, if you're not able to find it through hitting just openai.com and making your way to the developer of the API world, there's lots of places you can inbound if you have questions for us or want to partner with us. But we definitely welcome this ecosystem. You understand the deep domain expertise, you have the relationships, you have the credibility, and we want to bring that technology behind you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
That was awesome. All right, so I'm going to do what ChatGPT told me to do with y'all, okay? On the count of 3, I want everyone to cheer like your favorite tech startup just IPO'd. You know, the educators in the room, we're the ones that bring the energy in the classroom. I know y'all thought that was weak, right? Okay, I said on the count of 3, I want everyone to cheer like your favorite tech startup just IPO'd. 1, 2, 3. Dale, that's better. All right, everyone, this next panel is bringing some serious energy and some serious brain power to StageX. It's all about leaders pushing the frontiers and what's possible with AI. Moderating is Aileen Lee, founder of Cowboy Ventures, hence the creative title of this session, and she's joined by an incredible panel. Himanshu Palsule, CEO of Cornerstone, Edwin Scholte of Articulate, and Joshua Zhu, CEO of HeyGen. Let's give them a warm welcome to StageX.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited about this panel because I'm Aileen Lee from Cowboy Ventures, and this is a Cowboys of AI panel, has anyone, raise your hand if you've heard about this thing called AI before? Okay, so we're just going to jump right into it. So I'd love to start maybe with you, Himanshu. So for anyone in the audience who may not have heard about your giant company, explain what we'll just go down the row and explain what your company does and maybe what some of the key products are.
Yeah, so we are the leader in learning and talent development solutions. We have about 125 million users, and our course gets taken every 3 seconds in the world.
Awesome. Okay.
So we are a creator platform for workplace training. We have about 50,000 unique logos worldwide, about 250,000 user community that's creating about 6 million proprietary courses every year, kind of for the companies that they support.
Cool. Yeah, HeyGen is an AI video platform that allows anyone to create high-quality avatar human-speaking videos without needing a camera, microphone, or advanced editing skills.
Thank you. That was so concise. I appreciate that. Okay, and then let's just we'll do this again, and I won't go back and forth up and down the row so much, but talk about where you are on your AI journey. So, I mean, both your companies have been around for a while. They did not start out as AI companies. So talk about where you are and how it's changed your products and your business.
Absolutely. So our AI journey actually started in 2014 when we bought a data science company called Evolve, and then we bought another company in 2020. So we are no strangers to AI. If you think about how we curate and recommend learning, think of a Netflix model. If you take a certain course and you're doing well in it, the next course that you'll be taking is basically an AI engine that manages and curates that. AI for us is 4 things, and I'll keep this brief. It's assistive, which is co-pilots. That's sort of your buddy that helps you navigate through your day. It's adaptive, which is highly personalized solutions that are tailored to you and the speed at which you learn. We made an exciting acquisition, Tailspin. The third is immersive, which is now whether it's 2D or 3D, you're wearing the goggles and you're practicing, you're going through training, which has a very high recall. And the fourth is collaborative. There's going to be a world where there are so many co-pilots around that someone needs to start collaborating with the co-pilots to make decisions in the flow of work. So that's sort of our broad AI strategy.
Wait, say the last thing again, the collaborative. So agent to agent?
Agent to agent, agent understanding the context from where the other agent is coming in. If I'm a learner and I just came off, let's say, Microsoft Copilot and I finished a course, my agent needs to be aware of what happened. So this sort of cross-agentic framework is a vision that we have. And being sort of the largest cohort of learning, we see that as an opportunity to pull all of the learners together.
Wow, okay. We'll have to talk more about agent to agent. We'll talk more about agents. Edwin, what about at Articulate?
Yeah, so when we started our AI journey years ago, we started with our user community in mind. So we've been around for more than 2 decades. We have a very large user community who've been creating courses day in, day out. So we just didn't want to be an AI solution or add an AI solution just for the sake of an AI solution. So what we developed internally is what we call like the toy to tool scale. It's like when we're developing an AI solution, it has to solve a problem. Like when you're developing a product in any typical way, you want to make sure that you solve a problem that is worth solving for the customers. And we found 2 things. One is that our user community is dealing with a growing number of use cases that they're supporting. So what traditionally started as employee onboarding, skill development training, a lot of our users are currently creating product management, sales enablement courses. So a growing workload that they're dealing with. So doing something that will allow them to take on more of that, doing work better, faster, would make a ton of sense. And then the second friction point, what we found is all of these courses that are being created, about 17,000 per day.
17,000 courses
17,000 proprietary courses per day.
Wow.
That our user community are creating. They need to be translated and localized, right? So we're workplace training companies, so we're working with a lot of companies that operate in multiple countries. So courses are going to be localized, and that's a very clunky and very expensive process. I mean, think about it as localizing courses as outpatient surgery. You take a course and you send it to an outside patient, you get it back again, you can't manage it, very difficult. So we said, we got to fix that. So our AI journey started with, let's solve those 2 problems first. And that's what we've been doing in introducing AI to our user community.
Awesome. And HeyGen is an AI native company, right? So, but when you started, did you have to build everything from scratch?
Yeah, so we started the company roughly 4.5 years ago. And I mean, at that time, there's no such thing called generative AI. And we just want to use AI to create a video, create the content. And prior to founding HeyGen, I worked at a company work on, specifically, camera softwares to help people capture themselves easier. And we just realized that, there's still so many people are not able to create good content in front of the camera. And either their camera shy, they cannot perform well in front of camera, or they're introverts. And we felt that one day, if we could use AI to create the content, we can replace the camera, and we can actually replace the barrier for visual storytelling. And that's how we kind of started the company back then. Yeah.
And then maybe talk a little bit, like 4 years ago, or as when you started shipping product, did you have to explain to people what they would use it for? Like, how is the adoption? Talk about the adoption of AI, and Like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who are now using ChatGPT or Claude or every day, you kind of had to make yourself use it at times, right? And think about, like, what are things I could be doing with it? It's not always obvious. So can you talk a little bit about the adoption path, and, like, did you have to seed the market to show people what they could do with it? And then maybe bring it to, like, what are the most popular use cases today?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, for the stuff we want to achieve is always very obvious and very simple. We want to create a video without needing the camera. And I think the challenge back then was less about, you know, to explain to the customer what it does. It's more about whether the technology is capable enough to produce the high quality content, you know, like we have today. And, you know, I think we always have such thing to navigate in the whole, you know, human-centered video areas, the uncanny valley, right? So, which means that, you know, as long as your content's not good enough, it essentially is unusable. And in my opinion, there's always an invisible threshold in terms of the quality. You really need to be better than that threshold in order to make the content usable. I think in the early days, we definitely, you know, took us a long time, you know, to really put into R&D, you know, research into developing the latest model. At some point of time, I think, remember, that was probably roughly 2 years ago, around the same time when ChatGPT came out. I think the technology community has been, you know, seen lots of progress across not only LLM, but also, you know, image and video generation. And suddenly, we just, one day, you know, we have the video model that can produce good enough quality, and then we are seeing a massive adoption from customers. And I think, so first of all, HeyGen is a very horizontal platform. People are using it for different, you know, use cases, ranging from marketing, sales outreach, internal training, learning development, and education. I think specifically to the audience today, I think, you know, companies are using HeyGen to create scalable, localized content for onboarding, compliance training, you know, skill development, etc.
Awesome. I actually tried HeyGen, and we have a meeting every year with our investors, and so I basically recorded a short video of myself talking. I think it was like 30 seconds or something like that, and then you basically just type a script in, and I welcome our investors and kind of AI. I rebranded myself Aileen. So Aileen welcomes everyone to the meeting. You were born for this, right? I know, exactly. I have to thank my parents. Okay, so okay, maybe the two of you then talk about getting people to use AI, both internally in your company and then also like customer adoption. Like, how much hand-holding? Because I understand from the customer side, on the one hand, people are like, they're being told by their bosses that you need to use AI, but then also there's like AI committees, like, hold on, we have to make sure it's safe. Like, there's like this weird push-pull. So talk a little bit about, on the customer side, what you're seeing.
Aileen, I think that's a very important question. Similar to learning, there is top-down learning, which typically comes from our CHROs, learning departments, heavy on compliance, et cetera. But then the real magic happens when it's bottoms up, where people start taking control of their own career and their skills, et cetera. It's the same thing with AI. You're going to have your CIOs, your organizations mandate governance and ethics and laws and all of that, which is important. But quickly start imagining a world where AI is very native to everything happening, to the point that I believe in maybe 10 years, the word agent will go away because it's really a competency that's just created in what you do. So I would say be curious. If for those who are novices, start with the basics. Start with ChatGPT, Google Gemini, get more advanced, create a Gilby. If those of you have done that, be careful with that. The Gilby one day will be your real avatar and persona. And then mandate that. I mean, I've mandated my executive leadership team to start using AI for their functions, where it could be call deflection, could be a marketing program, could be a telesales, but start adopting it. But the one thing I want to ensure you all understand is there is no reason for panic, nor is there a reason to cram your knowledge, because the beauty of AI is you will get information at the point when you need it. So get more agile, get more curious, be more adaptive, but then sort of the whole democratization of learning would indicate that you don't need to sit with a big corpus of information and try to digest it all. I think those days are gone when we all had to do that, and there's plenty of examples. You know, just be prepared to be aware and then be prepared to consume it when you need it.
But let me circle back to the customer side, though, in terms of things that you've rolled out. Has it been easy does it just slipstream right into the product? People don't even notice? Or do you have to actually sit them down and be like, there's this new feature, here's how you use it, and then how do you get people to use it?
Yeah, let's break AI into 2 decades. Let's talk about the natural AI, which again, for a product that essentially is a recommendation engine for learning, kind of like the Netflix model. That was just slip it into the product and it gets smarter. It starts to understand more about you based on how you take courses, how you quiz, how you assess, and kind of like if you ever played games, when I play a game, the game really dumbs down. When my son plays a game, it gets really complicated. So there's a little bit to that on how learning happens. The second decade is about this GPT business, which is now about a product that's, as the name suggests, generative, pre-trained, and transformative. That takes some time. And the key in that is find a use case that is real. Don't start by putting 100 apps out there because they're all ChatGPT. There's enough of that out there. There's enough of noise. To rise above the noise, understand in your industry. And we have customers, whether in the technology space, especially in the healthcare space, in the services space, they have use cases that you need input and you need analysis faster and broader than a human can scale. Start there, and then the adoption becomes easier. But it'd be interesting to hear from the 2 of you, but adoption will be a hockey stick. There will be a period of quiet usage with low adoption. Don't give up. That's basically the whole world coming to grips with this new paradigm. And then as we're starting to see with many of our applications, you will hit that inflection point.
Okay, Edwin?
Okay, so we took a little different approach to that. So we truly believe in empowering humans to make a decision. So we haven't been mandating anything around AI. We felt it's our job to create a solution that becomes a magnet, that really solves a problem. So just to give you a very specific example, I mentioned, when you're increasing the number of use cases for creating training, you have to find ways to optimize, right? And a big component, let's say you want to create a question bank, you want to use Bloom's taxonomy, mid-level complexity. That takes a long time to put something like that together, to do your research, find the information, synthesize the information, and then ultimately put this into a knowledge bank. And what we developed is something that can just simplify that and take that authoring piece away and make the instructional designer and editor who can iterate upon that and save massive amount of time. When we created that, it just automatically happened. So we've been around for 2 decades. We cannot force AI on our customer base. We have to make it a choice. And what we found is since we launched our first AI solution, within 3 months, more than 50% of our new customers are buying the product with AI, without us doing any aggressive sales or saying, hey, you have to use it. So we did that for our customer base. I truly believe, and I agree with you, the North Star is, whether it's 12, 18 months, or 24 months, every user will use the product with AI just because it's the better user experience, and it just makes yourself better. I think that the world is going to evolve around that. We're still entering compliance barriers for large organizations that we need to go through. So I truly believe that. And localization is going to follow the same pattern. Internally, we use the same, what I mentioned, toy to tool scale. So we allowed everybody to try on our AI, just try whatever you want to do. And then you very rapidly find that if AI really doesn't solve a problem, people are just going to move away from it, just drop it. Yeah. So right now we're moving into a phase that, like, what is it that we want to solve with AI? So how can we make our humans in the organization better the same way that we're doing for our user community? And that's been the approach we've been taking internally and externally.
So yesterday we got this gift. I don't know if anyone has read this memo by Toby, the CEO of Shopify. So he basically wrote an internal memo that got leaked, so then he published it, and he basically said, AI is no longer optional at Shopify. And he basically said, learn it or risk becoming obsolete. We are going to be changing our performance review rubrics, that we're going to actually, in your performance review, we're going to be noting all the different ways that you have changed the way that you work using AI. And there's no new hiring unless you prove to me that a job can be done, has to be done by a person and cannot be done by AI, right? So that's like a throwdown. It's not like a nice to have. It's like you have to, it's like in the old days, if you ever heard about when Steve Jobs came back to Apple and people got in the elevator with him and he would say, give me, in 30 seconds, tell me why I shouldn't fire you right now. Like this is, Toby's throwing it down. Like, show me why your job needs to exist versus AI doing it, and show me all the ways that you are using AI to actually not hire anybody and in your business process. So that's maybe an extreme, or maybe that's a norm. Like, have you each written memos like that? And what do you think about that? Haven't been
No.
leaked? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, look, whether you explicitly say it in the memo, some members of my executive team are sitting here nodding. So how I said it, I have absolutely said it to my executive leadership team that we better justify why we need to replace headcount when we lose them. What is it? Because look, gravity will always keep pulling us back to the way we always done things till one day you realize it's too late and you miss the boat. We've seen this over and over in this industry. So whether it's as extreme as sending the memo or essentially freezing open jobs other than certain exceptions, and then giving the budget to force that AI within the organization. Whether it's hiring a quote-unquote AI czar, if I can use that word, or an AI native to drive that through the organization, people won't change. The other way to do it is set metrics. Say that in your development organization, there will be no QA engineers in 5 years. There'll be no sort of marketing copywriters. There'll be no recruiters. Reality is it's not going to be that. And then we can talk about the role of the human as it evolves, but it's a forcing function that for the good of our own people and our company, we have to do. So I read the memo. I get it. I get the gist of it. And how you communicate that to your people stylistically is up to every CEO.
I like the idea of, and I do agree that the forcing mechanism is to set expectations very clearly. Right? So not to say, I'm not going to tell you how you get to the outcome, but I'm going to define the outcome for you. So for example, in customer support, and you feel that there's a better way of providing customer support, and you put some metrics around that, then let the folks that are responsible for that area figure out how they get there. But be firm on the metrics, be firm on the outcome that you expect, because that's ultimately going to drive the behavior that you want to see.
What's an example of how you would change how you're currently defining an outcome for a product team or a customer support team, like with AI and without AI?
Yeah, I mean, start with, as you build your budget, as you build your plan, start with very realistic goals on what you expect. If you are in a customer support role, you get calls, you answer calls, come up with a number that I want 60% of the incoming calls deflected by AI before it ever reaches a human. Easy to measure, and maybe you start your year with 20, you start with 30, and then you move up. So based on who you are, what you do, and what's real for you, set hard metrics that are non-negotiable, and you take your organization there. But then along with that, make sure you're upskilling your employee base to understand what that means. And that whole area of skilling and micro-skilling and skilling in the flow of work is very essential. Otherwise, you're going to create a chasm. You're going to be that sort of, the CEO who's not in touch with what's real. And you have to do both together and run your business. And if you need a good upskilling solution, you can call Cornerstone.
Okay, so do we all get advertising time now? Kind of, but no, I think I agree with all. I also think that you got to make space and provide opportunity for your employees to trial and error, right? So it's the same thing how you're figuring out AI in your own personal life. It is really about encouraging people to sit back, take an hour out of your day, and just start playing around and sort of really uncovering what's the art of the possible. And then, to your point, don't resist it. Right? So a lot of the things that you still see is like with every revolution that's happening, I mean, there's an initial resistance that, okay, this is not applicable to me because what I'm doing is so unique. Just let that go. I mean, you're not that unique human. I mean, you'd say there's a lot of stuff that you can do kind of that can be replaced, but what you can do is redefine your uniqueness. Right? And in order to do that, I think as an organization, you got to give space and runway for folks to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will only add one thing to that. I think today a lot of people are still seeing AI as a tool, but I think more like AI is actually a mindset. I think we need to be convinced that leveraging AI can really, really improve our efficiency. And we've been seeing that from customers of HeyGen create localized content with a fraction of time and cost. And we're also seeing that internally. We have enabled everybody have access to ChatGPT. Every engineer have access to Cursor for coding. And even I use ChatGPT for all to create some product prototype, things like that. That really, really helps to improve the efficiency out there. And I think, I think as a product company, I think one of the key things that actually to focus on for us is to focus on access and simplicity. I think at the end of the day, not everybody will actually prompt the LLM or write Python code, right? I think the AI has to be very, very simple, intuition enough and fast. And that's kind of one of the core philosophy we build the product at HeyGen as well.
Awesome. Okay, so maybe paint a vision for where it's heading. So you've already started to, you're an AI native company. You've been using AI internally and in your externally facing process. We talked a little bit about agents, right? Agents were like the hot buzzword of last year, this year. Paint a picture for 2, 3, 4 years out. How will your products be different? How will, I think all of us come here in a way, we want to go back to our offices and feel like, I get it now. I see the future.
Yeah.
Paint a picture for us.
Yeah, and I'll keep this brief. I know we're running out of time. I think it's 3 things. One is what's called modalities, that any content that's created has to work in any environment on any device at the time you need it. That is the power of AI. If I'm in front of a computer, it works there. I'm on a mobile phone, it works on that. I have time and I'm putting on 3D AR, VR glasses. The same content with the same level of curation, but adjusted to my modality so that that knowledge is traveling with me. I could be backstage asking ChatGPT, what should I expect in questions at this conference, and it has to work there.
Actually, all these questions were generated by ChatGPT.
Aileen. The second thing is you finally now a vehicle to practice learning. The one sort of limitation on the way we do learning was you learned something and then you were tested. I use this. If you're getting ready for a difficult client conversation, you're about to go and deal with a difficult employee, AI now allows you to practice, get better, gets recommendations in a safe zone where you're not being judged, you're not being measured, and you're moving on. And the final thing, and there's probably a whole session we can do on this, is skilling, is the world on how you skill. The skill that you need at the time you need it. The learning systems understand what the recommendations need to be. My son's finishing his graduation in cognitive science. He needed to learn programming. He learned it from GPT, his entire Python learning and how he goes about it. I got some great stories. He learned it when he needed it. He didn't go out and take a course, and he'll keep getting better when he needs to. That is the paradigm that is going to change, and that is what the future is going to hold.
Yeah, I think the future of AI learning is going to be, personalized, video first, and always on. And think about that you have a private coach that, understand your goal, understand your limitation, and, knows about your career development needs. And it's going to give you the right content in the right format at the right time. And I think that type of training would not look like slides or text as we all probably consume most of them today. It would be video, it would be dialogue, it would be interactive content. And I think the nice thing about that is, with the conversation and immersive video content, we can actually, highly personalized, consume highly personalized content for our learning experience.
So do you think 5 years from now, how far out is it? Like I wake up in the morning and a voice is like, good morning, Aileen. Like, here's your day today, you got this. Like, what do you think how is it gonna manifest?
I don't know. Look, we don't have a crystal ball. The only thing what I do know is that whatever we're saying here is gonna be going 4 or 5x faster than we probably anticipated to happen. So my view on this is that as humans, we need to rethink, like, what is our value kind of that we're adding. And so that has been very set in stone for the last few decades. And I think there's a lot of fear around AI, how it's going to change our jobs, how it's going to change our lives. I personally think that it's going to be for the better. We're going to become better human beings. We're going to be more productive. We're going to drive more output, do amazing things. But we have to take a step back and figure out, what role
What
do
is
we
it that
want
we
to
can
play?
do that
what role
AI
do we
can't
want to
do?
play in that?
Can I paint a quick moniker as a leave behind, especially for the educators? Look, we
Yeah.
all came from a world where you had a human, the instructor, you had a human, the learner, and then you had technology in the middle that facilitated that. Let's start thinking about, you have an agent, which is the instructor, and now you have an agent, which is the learner, and you have the human in the middle, governing, orchestrating, setting boundaries, setting risk tolerances, and that is how the jobs are going to change.
We just sit around and eat bonbons while the agents are doing all the work. Okay, I have a couple quick speed round questions, and we can sneak this in. We're just going to go really quick. What's the AI product you use most in your daily life?
It's still GPT or something like that. And then Microsoft Office Copilot. On a Friday, go ask it to read all your unread mail and then tell you which one you should reply on a Saturday. It'll do it in a jiffy.
Wow, that's cool.
So I'm obsessed with granola right now.
Say it again?
Granola, both
Granola.
in personal life and professional life. Basically takes a
There's still a lot of murmuring about the Friday afternoon. That's good.
It's really kind of takes a transcript and makes it a promptable, and I'm sure that's the word, promptable LLM. And then on the personal life, ChatGPT is like, I love asking stupid questions like, why is there a shortage on eggs and not on chicken? It's like, what?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
Yeah. I personally use the Google Notebook LM a lot. And, every day it took me about 25 minutes to 30 minutes drive to work. And one day before that, I will prepare all the reading I need to do. Long documents, I put everything onto, Google Notebook LM.
And it reads it to you on your way to work?
Yeah, I just listen to that. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I extract roughly, 30 minutes of content. Usually I can consume a ton of documents. And then when I get to work, I have the full context about all the meetings.
That's so awesome. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I have a whole long list so we'll have to come back next year, and our agents will tell you the answers to the next questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aileen. We'll be seeing you soon because she's doing double duty in the next Fireside chat. That will be with Vijay Karunamurthy, Field CTO at Scale AI, and Julia Stiglitz, CEO and co-founder of Uplimit. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Y'all are stuck with me for another session. I'm super excited to be back. It's me, Aileen. And I'm here with my friends Vijay and Julia. They are among two of the smartest technologists that I know, product people, and also great humans. So it's very unusual. I've never actually interviewed a couple before. So this is a really cool special because you've just got this like crazy AI technology frontier leader power couple.
You're blowing our cover already.
All right, so let's first start about how you met. How did it go down? And this is pre-AI, is that correct?
This was pre-AI.
Okay.
But we did meet online, I guess appropriately. There was a bug in the app, so even though we knew a ton of people in common and had worked at the same company, it only showed that we both liked this organization called Code 2040, which I don't know if anyone in here is from there, but it's a nonprofit that helps people that are college students that are underrepresented break into tech. And I thought that was pretty cool that you liked that nonprofit, and that's how we initially connected.
And wait, where were you working at the time, Julia?
I was at Coursera.
Okay.
I was doing my own startup.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were kind of like a humble startup founder?
Yeah, I think I paid for dinner. I don't even remember now.
Okay. And then talk a little bit about your career transitions. When did AI start to be something that you thought like, oh, this is something I could really embrace in my career, and it became part of your work?
Yeah, for me, I'll start. Years ago, I worked at YouTube, and I remember, like every early YouTube employee, the very first video I saw on YouTube was a video of a cat. It was, Steve Chen's cat, which was like this really fat tabby cat, and he had in his loft. And I thought like it was just a magical time watching like 20 videos of his cat in the course of like 10 minutes. But it's hard to believe now, like cats were actually one of the biggest things on YouTube for a long time in the early days. And I remember like a conversation with our first product manager, Mary Rose Dunton, about the categories we should have at the top of the site, because we had sports, we had music videos, and then we had pets. But we really should have split up like cats and dogs into separate categories, because each one of those was so big compared to everything else. And the real key moment for us was realizing that because of some early pioneers in this area, Fei-Fei Li, Andrew Ng, others that had like a real conviction and courage about using machine learning to do something that hadn't been tried before, we learned that you could actually take all the thumbnails of all the videos ever uploaded to YouTube, train it on a scale of model that no one had ever tried before, and the model could actually pick up on its own what a cat was. It would understand from looking at all these thumbnails, a cat is an animal, it has like 4 legs, it walks around, it can identify all these different interesting videos with cats in them that we never even realized were on the site before. So for all of us at YouTube, I think that was a really key moment in how we're going to learn about the world around us, how we're going to discover great content, how it's going to really power the future of how we engage with content from that point
How many years ago was that?
That was probably 10 years ago that we really started to take off.
All right.
Yeah, and for me, so I started at Coursera the month the company launched, when there was 10 people at the company, and I was hired by Andrew Ng and Daphne Kohler, 2 of the godparents of AI. And it really was always part of the vision of like how the company could evolve and how AI could be used to transform education. But it was really just the vision. Like it didn't actually make sense to try to build in that direction, given the business model and given where the technology was at the time. So for me, it was always a question of that it was going to happen. The question was when. And then when ChatGPT launched, it was very clear that the when is now, and that things were going to move very quickly.
Well, okay, so let's talk about, like, in between when ChatGPT launched and you're being at Coursera, you left to start Uplimit. So maybe can you talk a little bit about why you did that? What does Uplimit do?
So I started Uplimit towards the end of the pandemic. It was when Zoom schools were all over the news, and everyone was talking about how horrible online education was. And I kept on thinking, like, there has to be a better way to do this. Like, the world needs a way to scalably teach people online, a cost-effective way to do so, and our existing solutions weren't working at the level they needed to. And so I started to think, how can we do this better? And the 2 big things were changing were how people engaged online socially, and then how AI could be used to begin to create new types of experiences for the learner and new capabilities for the instructors that would allow real teaching and learning at scale. And that's when I teamed up with my co-founder, who is probably somewhere in the room, Saurabh Bahaj, who is an early Coursera engineer and then had gone on to Google Brain. And we started iterating on what is this next generation of online learning and how do we make it work at scale.
Awesome. Okay, and then at some point you joined Scale AI.
Yeah. At Scale, we're about an 8-year-old startup, but we're now like one of the biggest private AI companies out there, one of the fastest growing. When we first started, our CEO, Alex Wang, who started it when he was still at MIT, he really understood the value of data that played in training AI models, and just finding like the right bits of quality data can make a huge dramatic improvement in the ability of a self-driving car to get on the road, or ability of robots to do really important work for humans. So we ended up 3 years ago when I joined Scale, one of our best research partners was a lab called OpenAI that wasn't as well known as it is today. And we ended up partnering with them on some of the techniques to do this for language, for human language. That ended up being released as ChatGPT over the end of that year. And ever since then, it's
When you say partners, what does that mean?
Yeah, so there's a paper that came out called Instruct GPT that laid out this technique of how humans could play a really key role in encouraging the model to give better, more insightful, more instructful answers to the sort of requests that humans need models to do. Up to that point, we trained like really large models, but we didn't really task them with doing things that were important for human beings to use them. And so that was kind of a key revolution in the field. And a lot of smart researchers at OpenAI that pioneered this technique. But ever since then, we are now using AI for all these applied areas that we didn't imagine before. So we're using it in education to help build more personalized learning journeys. We're using it in healthcare to build personalized medicine. It's all these ways of connecting AI to the human experience that's really pushing the field forward today.
And wait, what's the role that, just to clarify, what is the role that Scale plays? Because you've got the model companies. How does Scale fit into working with clients to use AI?
Yeah, a lot's changing today with the rise of agents. So, everyone knows that there's all of this huge institutional knowledge that are in these healthcare systems or in these manufacturing companies that have been built up over years of people doing this work and understanding really deeply what it means to do this work. Translating that institutional knowledge into the way that an AI system can actually do tasks on behalf of a human and do it pretty reliably in a way that humans still have oversight over how that work's being done is still a pretty tricky challenge. And so we often get brought in where people are using pretty sophisticated models like OpenAI's new reasoning models, but they want it to try to accomplish really difficult checks and supply chain disruption or other things that are important right now.
Okay, all right, that's great. So let's go back to, I guess, I mentioned in the previous panel, Toby from Shopify had just like laid down the law about like no new hires, you have to prove that AI can't do the job, use it internally, use it externally. So talk a little bit, because you're both at basically AI native companies, how are you using it internally in very different ways than if we all work at an older company, we'd be like, wow, I can't believe you're doing that.
Yes, so it's changed how we thought about building the company. You know, we're early stage, we're hiring a lot of people, but we're also being very thoughtful about what functions we're hiring for. And so, as an example, an SDR team, sales development team, who are normally right out of school, helping to bring in new customers, that's a place where we think we can use technology to solve rather than building out a big team. And so we've challenged our sales and marketing team to think about how you use technology to solve that function using agents rather than building a big team there. There's other places where it's really more about augmentation, and I actually would think, I think that's across the entire company. So every team, every function is using AI to gain new superpowers, whether it's on the engineering side using tools like Cursor that help them be a lot more productive, or on the marketing side using...
Have you been measuring the impact of Cursor, like productivity? One portfolio company CEO that we work with said, I had everyone in engineering adopt Cursor, and we're seeing 50% productivity gains on coding time. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense. We're not measuring it, but we know that we know it's significant. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest ways you see this impact is when new engineers start at scale in lots of other companies. The time to that first commit making it into production is becoming much, much faster than it was a long time ago. And I used to work at Apple before scale, where it would be years before you'd see any of your code actually used on people's phones when you start. So actually, like, having people feel that they can make code an environment where they can build better, like better testing, make it more reliable, that's something that AI is helping engineers do their work better rather than just replacing engineers.
And actually, the whole ethos of company building has changed. Whereas before, how you would evaluate your success as an entrepreneur is how much you've raised or how many people you have in your company. And those no longer are the metrics that entrepreneurs are using. It's really how much revenue have you produced with how small of a team.
Yeah.
And there's a website that we were sharing around at our company the other day that's the Lean Startup Leaderboard, looking at how far companies have gotten with how few people. And that's really what companies are taking pride in.
Okay, so that leaps us forward a little bit to, I think, given there's a perfect storm between economic uncertainty, potential economic rocky times ahead, AI, mandate on no hiring. So what jobs will there be in the future? Like, what do you think is safe knowing what you know about AI?
Yeah, humans are leveraging their knowledge in new ways, and they're kind of moving up the stack to more strategic thinking about what businesses should be doing. So a great example of this is everyone knows supply chains are going to be totally rethought over the course of the next couple of years, across international borders, even within this country, how do you get parts from one part to another? Rather than humans just doing a lot of legwork to try to figure out, like, oh, can I go to this supplier and ask them questions directly? Humans are kind of moving up the stack and doing strategic planning exercises today to think through, as a business, over the next 3 years, what are the risks that I need to stay ahead of? Can I ask like an OpenAI deep research or a Gemini model, to forecast that for me and maybe write out like a pretty comprehensive report and then summarize that, so as a C-suite team, we can all come together and have a really good wargaming exercise or other ways to think about the future. So that's a way in which AI is helping people move up towards more strategic thinking rather than focusing on just the lower level details.
I also think there's so many areas where there's still a lot of scarcity. Like even thinking about education and the number of people that are able to pursue a college degree or across the globe. And I think where AI can come in is thinking about how we take these problems that have been somewhat intractable and make it so that scarcity issue is no longer there, where every learner can have support, where an incredible instructor can reach thousands or tens of thousands instead of 20. I think there's huge problems that, like, as a society, we need to solve. And if we can focus that energy there, there's opportunity and there's jobs.
So maybe that's a good pivot too. You've rolled out a lot of new AI features just even in the past week. Can you talk a little bit about what you've rolled out and how you're seeing the adoption and how it's changing how people are learning?
Yeah, so last week we made an announcement. We've rolled out a suite of AI agents focused on a lot of the areas that L&D is focused on. So skill building agents with role plays and interactive exercises where learners are getting personalized feedback, course manager agents that are analyzing the data, pulling out subsets of learners that are struggling, drafting individual interventions, and then the human is pressing send and it's going out to their Slack or Teams account, and then teaching assistant agents. And then we're actually taking that further. One of the announcements was that this summer we're going to launch a fully autonomous agent on the course management side, so that as you're going through an experience, the agent is analyzing what you're doing and how you're progressing. So maybe you asked a really great question in that live session. The agent will follow up with you afterwards and say, terrific question, here's more context on it, or here's a role play to help you practice that question that you asked. And it'll create something that's specific for you in the modality that will work given your learning objectives, and you'll be able to learn and progress. And so it's, and what we're seeing is sort of twofold. One is around efficiency and being able to scale these programs and reach more people. But then the other one is really around efficacy. And some of that is about scaling humans. So actually allowing more people to have an experience that has a human touch involved, where those great instructors are scaled in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that's one of the products that you rolled out maybe a year or two ago is one called Nudgy. What does Nudgy do?
So Nudgy follows up with you when you need a little nudge, whether it's to complete an assignment or to join a class, or now Nudgy's getting a lot deeper as it gets autonomous, where it's noticing that you struggled in a role play, that you didn't understand a concept in an open-ended assignment, and providing you the support when you need it.
Who doesn't need Nudgy in their life?
And that's exciting for me because I know it's at the cutting edge of what research shows is possible with AI, because as we've been building agents, they have all these powerful capabilities to use tools and to do reasoning, but memory is really kind of the final frontier for agents, being able to do things a month from now or 2 months from now and nudge you to take an action. That's kind of like the new thing that researchers are still focusing on, so it's great to see Julie and others roll that out.
So can you paint a picture, because you're so deep into being able to leverage AI to build products, you see how people are using them, you see like hard problems in healthcare that are being potentially solved by AI. Roll the tape forward for us a year or two. Like, it's just been 2 years since ChatGPT. What does 2 years from now look like in terms of our daily lives, our work lives? Yeah,
we're definitely like pushing the field forward in terms of what human oversight of AI looks like and what sort of roles we're all going to play in training these models. For example, 3 years ago when we did a lot of work to make the models better, a lot of that might be like computer vision tasks, like the cat example. Anyone in the world can figure out what a cat is if you've ever seen a cat before. Today, we do a lot of work around the country with contributors that are helping push the models to the frontier of what they're possible. And that work, 12% of that work today that we do is done by PhDs. Over 40%, they have a medical degree or a legal degree in their field. It's really people at the top tier of their fields that are needed in order to take us to the frontier of what's possible. But that also means like the amount of oversight we need of using a model in a medical situation is dramatically changing. We need doctors to be able to say, this is a good way to use a model, in order to talk about diabetes to a patient. But if you're going to talk to someone about juvenile diabetes, these are the additional things you need to incorporate into how you talk about that, how you talk about what a lifestyle intervention might look like. So that level of like medical oversight is something we're seeing in that field. We're seeing that in the legal field and other areas as well. And we're kind of rethinking how humans need to interact with the technology.
So are you saying the investment is going in now to get the models to a place where the advice from a bot a year from now for someone with a very specific problem will be very good?
Yeah, but you'll still need humans to oversee how that advice is being given. And so explaining the reasoning of the model, explaining all the tools that were used in order to come up with that answer, it's still really important to present that to a medical doctor or a legal professional so that they can exert that oversight.
Okay.
So to that question, like I think how most people think about it right now is around efficiency, but how I think it really is going to play out is much more profound into the actual nature of work. So there was a study that came out recently from Ethan Mollick, and it was looking at how teams perform with AI, and how individuals perform with AI. And what they found was that teams with AI performed the best, but then the surprising result was that individuals with AI performed better than teams without AI. And so we know that there's a huge benefit to having teams. It allows you to have experts. It allows you to have cross-functional expertise within the room to solve problems in creative ways. But what does it mean if you can have an individual that's using AI that can be more effective than a team? And it starts getting into questions about how our organizations are structured and why we have different teams and what the function is. And so I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface in terms of how it could shift how we work and how work is structured and what organizations look like to sort of manage that.
So does that mean potentially in the future, instead of having a whole team doing something, it could be one person with AI?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, a little scary. You have kids. What will you encourage your kids to study so they actually can get a job someday? And be able to navigate our future effectively.
Well, I think it actually starts with human skills, and a lot of the things that you learn in preschool, which is where our youngest is. I think it's about relationships and connection. I think it's about having a moral compass, things that actually AI won't ever be able to do. And I think those are the types of humans and kids that we need to bring into this world to manage one that's going to be a combination of humans and, and a digital workforce.
One of the things we've seen with companies that are winning with AI, and this is true of education companies as well, is it's kind of like an F1 race where it's not the most important thing to have the fastest car out of the gate at the flag. It's actually more important to have the team that's working together that knows, like, when the driver says he needs to box and then you get the wheels on the car and you get back on the road, you communicate effectively. So learning how to use AI together in a collaborative environment is one of the things that I think humans need to learn. We need to learn in college. We need to learn how to do it in group projects and then hopefully bring that to the workforce too.
If you had to make a list of products to play with for our audience to make sure that they're familiar with, they incorporate them in their daily life, what would be on the cheat sheet?
So I would actually just start with ChatGPT and start asking random questions like, and these are questions I ask, should I wear a patterned dress on stage? Is that okay? ChatGPT approved. So, you can just start asking questions. What should I post for our hype post on LinkedIn? And it had a great idea about blurring an image and writing coming soon. Like, just start asking the questions that you're working on in your day-to-day life, in your day-to-day job, and start seeing what is it like to have an AI thought partner, an AI intern that is doing some of the work for you, that's bouncing off ideas. And then you start building intuition and you start realizing other areas that it can help you. But just start with a little curiosity. And it doesn't have to be serious, and it doesn't have to, rethink your whole job or anything like that. It can be, just about the pattern of your dress.
We do a lot of overly ambitious cooking. Like we have the Ottolenghi cookbook at home, and there are a lot of the ingredients there that I have no idea what they are. So using ChatGPT to do an overly ambitious recipe is a great way to get started.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We love learning from you. We love using your products. So thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next fireside chat will be a conversation between John Hage, Phyllis Lockett, and U.S. Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. Please give them a warm welcome.
Good morning, everyone. As you know, the theme of this year's ASU+GSV Summit is Learning at the Speed of Light, which is duly named because our new administration has been making changes at the speed of light, and in a way no one has ever seen before. Everyone who attends this summit, every year we come here because we are seeking innovation, breakthrough ideas, new solutions, because we all know the current system is not effectively serving our students. We may not agree on how to solve this problem, but we all have to agree that our current system is failing the majority of the students it serves, full stop. So let us all hold on to this truth as we enter this conversation with the 13th Secretary of the United States, Linda McMahon. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So Secretary McMahon, I have to start with the fact that you have had an incredible career and a track record of realizing groundbreaking achievements in a way that's never been done before in an industry that is not that favorable to women. Can you share some of the insights and highlights of your personal journey and what brings you to this experience that you're going to, from your background, that you're going to leverage in this new opportunity as Secretary?
Well, I'm not quite sure if you're asking me, was I ever a diva in WWE? That I was not. But I was the president and eventually the CEO of the company. My husband and I started it and built an incredible company that I'm very, very proud of. It is a global company today. It is traded on the New York Stock Exchange, and we started it, just the two of us, you know, at a desk in our basement. So it was, I'd love to tell that story because when I was the administrator for SBA and I was talking to a lot of small business owners, and I said, look, I feel your pain. I know where you're coming from. I've taken risks. I've gone bankrupt. I've lost everything. I've rebuilt. So when I talk to you about being innovative and taking chances and taking risks, I mean that. And, you know, if you don't fail sometime along the way, you really can't succeed. But what really got me into kind of in the education side was I was reading the newspaper one Sunday morning. I'm from Greenwich, Connecticut. I was reading the paper about the children were not meeting the levels of No Child Left Behind. That was during the Bush administration. I said, how can that be? This is Greenwich, Connecticut. This is one of the most affluent cities in the country. And I know the amount of taxes we pay for education, et cetera. So that was a Sunday. The next morning, I called the superintendent of school that was quoted in the paper. I wanted to come in and have a conversation with her and just say, how can I help? You know, what can I do? I was just a concerned citizen, and she wouldn't talk to me. And she wouldn't schedule a meeting with me. And I thought, wow, and I tried a couple of times, and I just never had any success in doing that. So the governor of the state was a friend, and I called her, and I said, what is going on with education in Connecticut? And she said, well, if you really want to know, let me introduce you to a few people. One of them was a woman named Daisha Toll, who started Achievement First Charter Schools in Connecticut, and she introduced me to several people. I became a supporter of the school. And I attended some of the classes and watched some of the teachers who also came from Teach for America, which was another very innovative teaching program. And I was just very moved by what they were doing because they were actually bringing kids up to grade level very, very quickly. And the state of Connecticut was not really very favorable towards charter schools, still isn't today. But we saw the success, so that was kind of my entree into being very concerned about our education and then supporting more charter schools and more programs. So it's been a good ride, and who would have ever thought? Here I sit as the Secretary of Education, and when the President Trump asked me about this job, I told him, I said, well, sir, I don't come from the world of education. And he said, I'm looking for an executive. I'm looking for someone who has leadership and management skills because of what we need to do with education in our country. And he said, and you're the perfect fit for that.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, first of all, Daisha is phenomenal. She is a friend of the work and has done magnificent things and told me a wonderful story about how you've supported Achievement First and the kids. So, you know, we really appreciate that. Wanted to shift to, you know, all the changes happening right now with the U.S. DOE. Every other country that we are competing with has a federalized education system. Given the states already control 90% of the education budgets and drive most of the decisions for their districts, how does dismantling the Department of Education move the dial for kids and help us compete with China and Singapore?
Yeah, I've been asked that question several times, and I've said, look, we haven't always had a Department of Education. It was actually voted on in 1979 under the Carter administration, really stood up in 1980. Since that time, we've spent over $3 trillion in education through the Department of Education, and we've seen our performance and our test scores continue to decline. We just simply aren't doing something right. And when I've talked to senators and other members on the Hill, when I've talked to educators and just said, we've got to be innovative, we've got to be creative. We are not addressing the needs of these children. We're not teaching them to read. How can we do that more effectively? Do we get back to basics? Should we teach more with phonics and memorization for math tables and things like that? And I've been touring some charter schools. I went to a couple in Florida and saw some of those programs. But I'm also interested, in all of the new technology. I'm sure none of you in here has any idea about any of that. But I'm just very, very interested in a lot of the new technology that I think can stimulate kids. We've just gotten to a point that we just can't keep going along doing what we're doing. Let's shake it up. Let's do something different. And it's not through bureaucracy in Washington. That is not where it happens. And I'll take just a little sidestep. Someone was asking me, I believe in an interview, and they were saying, look, we're really worried about our special needs kids with taking down, moving some of the departments that are in education, back to other areas. And it said, what's going to happen, to these children? And I said, that funding isn't stopping. The Title I funding isn't stopping. All of that is, at the very least, the same. It may shift to a different agency. And I said, but let me ask you this. I said, does a teacher that is working with that special needs child in the classroom and working with parents have a better idea of what that child needs, or me sitting in my office in Washington, D.C.? I think the answer to that is incredibly clear.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And I think that's what's so amazing about this group that you're speaking to is that we're all committed to doing what is right and best for students, and I know you are as well. And I think the questions we have around what happens as the department changes its function. So when authority starts going back to the states and some of that oversight function as well, how do you anticipate that will impact some of those key programs that in the past have participated in funding programs to states? And as the states take on their rightful role, because they are, in fact, the first place that education starts.
Well, it's very interesting that the states, and I think you mentioned this, Phyllis, is that 90% of the education budget now comes from the states. Only 10% comes from Washington, D.C. So, and imagine how much of that 10% is really tied up in bureaucracy and overhead that, if we eliminated that, could go to the states, or at least a good portion of that could go to the states to have more programs directly for children that are in schools. And that really is the president's goal, is to eliminate the bureaucracy. I heard a negative comment about taking down the Department of Education, but the words that were used were, the president wants to get rid of education. I'm saying, well, I don't think so. He is absolutely committed to every single child having equal access to an excellent education. And so that's what we are concerned about, is making sure that those dollars are funneling to the states. And when I've been asked, by Congress, who will very pointedly remind me that this cannot close, the Department of Education cannot close without an act of Congress or vote of Congress. And so I've been asked, how do you accomplish that? And I said, well, I really want to work with Congress. I want to have them partner with us so that they understand that what we really want to provide for the states are best practices and tools to help the states, so that when there is no longer that Department of Education, there are other agencies, et cetera, that will uphold and provide that.
So I do appreciate that in the bureaucracy, because there is certainly an opportunity to streamline. I think the more money we can get to students, the better we'll all be. I think the challenge is our country has not had a great track record across some states of ensuring that the students who need the resources the most get them. So I think what we're trying to understand, and I know there are some governors who want to ensure, who are, they want to take Title I and make them block grants, so they have flexibility to fund where they want. I think what we're trying to understand is how are you going to put guardrails around this to ensure that the students who need the most get the resources?
Well, if you look now, and that's an excellent question, and that is one that I'm asked often, and I don't have a magic answer to that at this moment. But what we have seen already are some of the great innovations that are taking place in many of the states in the country, and that is not because of the Department of Education, but that is because that local governors and local school superintendents and teachers and parents all working together. And I'm not saying it's one party or the other. I am just saying where there is that desire and that goal to bring in best practices. I mean, Governor Reynolds in Iowa has done some wonderful things. She's a strong school choice advocate and put together some very innovative programs. Governor DeSantis in Florida, Sarah Sanders, who's newly into Arkansas, trying to bring now in some programs that are going to work. Some governors are going to do this better than others, and that's just a fact. Some states will do better than others, and that's a fact. And so what we have to do is to make sure that we are encouraging, and I think the private sector, I think so many of you sitting in this room who are investing in innovation and in technology and helping develop it and wondering whether or not I should continue to invest in education, this is the time. This is the moment to do that. Because as we pull down that bureaucracy, there could be gaps and holes that we need you to fill. And I would like to work with you and understand more of that. Even if I step away from education, I'm not letting go of this because I think it is so important to our country. This is about our security, our economy, that next generation of growth. We will fail if we don't have the best educated or at least comparably educated, and I'm striving for the best educated workforce, children around, in the world. And I think that should be all of our goals.
That's great.
That's great. And I'm glad you mentioned and acknowledged that all states are not, some states are going to knock it out of the park and others may not, which is another reason the Department of Education had IES, this research and development arm, to help ensure that there's accountability and transparency. And so, again, want to understand in this new era, how are you going to help use data, right, in a transparent way to understand where we should be investing our resources, where we should be driving accountability, and how we can systematize and scale results?
Sure, and I would like to, continue to work with some technology advisors. There may be some people in this room who could really give us some good advice on this. As we are really looking at revamping IES, because as with any program, when it continues to grow, I've always called it mission creep. But suddenly you look around and you're going, well, why are we doing this? Why are we researching that? And we're ignoring this over here. So I think that there is a lot to look at with IES. But as a president and I've had a conversation, I've said, look, this is what keeps us honest, because it's comparing apples to apples everywhere. It is especially for NAEP. Yes. And I think especially for NAEP, and that is...
So we're going to keep NAEP?
Absolutely. And
all right.
Yes, and NAEP is something that we absolutely need to keep, because we do have to compare those apples to apples. And if we don't, states can kind of, they can be a little manipulative with their own results and their own testing, but I think it's a way that we keep everybody honest. And so, but does NAEP need to get revised? I don't know that answer. I'm not a technology expert, and but I would really be interested in hearing what we need to do. Can we measure differently? I know we're doing it now every other year, 4th and 8th grades. Is that still the model we ought to have? I just want to get the best results, yep, so that we can fine-tune best practices that we are offering to our states and the tools that we want to help them have, because that's really where we are now.
Great.
I'm jazzed about this.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
I love it. I think that everybody in this room is capable and willing to contribute in big ways to our success and our future, what would be some of the specific things that education entrepreneurs and tech entrepreneurs that are dedicating their entire career towards better results for students, how can they help during this transition and this new time that's coming in front of us? How can they participate?
Well, I think this is an example of one of the things that you can do, and continue to share your information. I wish that I could give you the blueprint of what the best technology answer would be for that, but I don't have that. But there are plenty of people in this room that do, and I think the fact that you are constantly being innovative and creative and working with schools and selling your product and your programs, you know, AI development. I mean, how can we educate at the speed of light if we don't have the best technology around, you know, to do that? I heard, I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this morning, I wish I could remember the source, but that there is a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, you know, every year starting, you know, that far down in the grades. And that's just that's a wonderful thing. Kids are sponges. You know, they just absorb everything. And so it wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have internet in our schools. Woo! Now, okay, let's see A1 and how can that be helpful? How can it be helpful in one-on-one instruction? How can it be helpful in absorbing, you know, more information for those fast learners? It can be more one-on-one directed. And those are the kinds of things and innovations that I want to see continue to develop.
You know, we have something similar. You helped start and be a part of the first charter school and its program there. I helped get the first charter school started in Florida. It's what made me passionate about education reform. How can school choice as a concept be beyond just a state model, but can be a national model for innovation? And how does that maybe play a role as the federal government thinks about its new role going forward to innovate and to, quite frankly, to inspire more school choice?
Well, I often say as I have opportunities to speak before audiences like this, and this doesn't make me a genius, but there is just not one size fits all for education. Children learn differently. Some are really able to be very adaptive, and so I think public schools, private schools, charter schools, homeschooling, whatever we can do to support and reach these kids, it's just wonderful. And it doesn't mean that they go full-time to one school. They may go to a public school part of the day, a private school to take a couple of courses. Later in the day, there could be offerings of technical development someplace else, and I think we just have to be open, you know, to allow all of these different forms of education to come in. And that's what I mean when I talk about helping to provide best practices and tools to states. If I, you know, were leaving any kind of a legacy, I hope that's kind of what I can do in a short period of time, and it won't be solved, but we can open the doors a bit more.
I'm glad you said that, because obviously, you know, I was deeply involved in the charter school movement in Chicago. I believe in charter schools. I believe in public schools. I believe in private. I believe in all schools that are delivering for our kids. And we learned so much from the wide range of the diverse schools that we had in our portfolio. So it is about all schools that are delivering for our kids. One of the things I really do have to touch on is diversity. And I know, given your journey, your career journey in the industry you're in, coupled with the individuals that you help take from nothing to stardom. And let's admit, some of these folks did not fit in mainstream, right? But you do appreciate the importance and the power of diversity. And so wanted to understand, what role is diversity going to play in this new era? And if you can touch on the recent memo that was sent out on Friday. What are you all trying to accomplish?
So which memo?
This is the...
There were a lot of memos that went out on
geez,
Friday.
I know. Running at the speed of light. This is the DI, about DEI. And the DEI programs are a form of discrimination against one group of Americans to favor another based on identity characteristics. And I think the challenge, right, and the truth of it is, and I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and most of our district's funding is based on property taxes. And so what that means is that those who are living in really wealthy neighborhoods are getting a lot more money than the ones who are living in low-income areas. And we know there's a persistent achievement gap among Black and brown and low-income students. And so there has been a lot of resources directed as a result of that. So when we hear that, oh, DEI is a bad thing, it's confusing. And so help us understand why that memo was sent, what are we trying to accomplish here? In the spirit of serving all students, we want to ensure all of our kids have the opportunity to reach the American dream.
Well, thank you. That's I think discrimination is the bad thing. We shouldn't have discrimination anywhere, whether it's religious, whether it's race, whether it's sex. There should be no discrimination. Everyone should be treated equally, educated equally. And one of the things that you're talking about in states, which was, as I mentioned, relative to Greenwich, Connecticut, the achievement gap was the other thing that caught my attention in the article that I was reading about education in Connecticut. And, you know, funds are distributed in the states on a formulaic basis decided by the governors and the state legislators. So I think that that's where we have to really hone in and have governors and state legislators look at that across the board. And I know in my town of Greenwich, rightfully so, there's not as much funding that comes there as there are some in more of the inner cities, and that's correct. So we need to continue to focus on where these funds need to be spent, but making sure at the same time that we are treating everyone equally. We're not taking away the rights of anyone to serve the rights of another, that it is equal distribution of the law. And so I think that's the right thing.
And that's great. That's important, which is why the title, Title I and these grants are so important to keep intact, which you said are going to stick.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Title I funding, and I talked to the president about this. Title I funding, and the
Pell grants,
and the IDEA
yep.
funding. The Pell grants they're not looking to be taken away because we understand that the funding is the good portion.
That's right. So overall, I guess I've been talking to some of your team, and I'm again, just the translation of this, because I think and we have a lot of educators out here too, who are
thank you for that.
Who are confused, right? A little confused, right? So when we talk about getting rid of or eradicating DEI, it sounds to me that what you're trying to accomplish is that you're ensuring that the inclusion efforts that are underway are not done to the point of excluding other groups. Does that make sense to me? So as we think about it, what's in and what's out, right? Like if there's a diverse scholarship programs, I know many of us have benefited from mentoring programs, cultural celebrations. Like, are those still a thing?
I really believe, like cultural celebrations, like Black History Month, it's not just about blacks, it's about our history.
About our country.
And if we're having, an Asian American group, well, it shouldn't just be Asian Americans. We should welcome everyone to come in and learn about that history and that diversity. So rather than being with exclusion, no, it's all about inclusion to all of it.
Thank you. So I feel very strongly about this issue as well. My wife and I adopted 2 boys from Haiti that now attend HBCUs and have been transformational in their life as young boys in integrating into this country. So my question would be around, and I understand the president has said some things around HBCUs and has strong support for those. So it may be around that issue. Is there any thought about how HBCUs and programs like that can continue to play a vital role to ensure all families and all students have an excellent opportunity going forward?
Sure, and in the president's first administration, that was one thing that he did focus on, was HBCUs, and there is no funding in any of the programs that I have seen or any of the talk that would reduce any of the funding to HBCUs. I had the privilege, I think it was like my second week in office, of meeting with President Vinson from Howard University, and I'm just excited about the fact that I'm not quite sure what the what the statute is, but I am on the board there, and I'm looking forward to my first board meeting and visiting, and I promised him I would visit some of the other colleges that were part of the HBCU system, because there's a perfect example. Sounds like it's about blacks, but it's not. It's about everyone. Enrollment is open to everyone, and some of the most successful and accomplished graduates that are coming out of HBCUs are other ethnicities other than black, and I think that's a real testament to show about that inclusion effort.
And we really appreciate your support of HBCUs. In fact, I've got to give a shout out to the summit because we have a new HBCU partnership this year with Florida USTA. And I think there are about 12 HBCU institutions here this year. So I'm sure they would love for you to have exposure to their programs as well.
Thank you, thank you. I'd love that.
That's great. So let's talk about what needs to change in our K-12 schools and higher ed systems to ensure we have the talent to compete. Because one of my pet peeves is that we celebrate this 82% graduation rate, and we have about 2/3 of our high school students who are never going to finish a 2 or 4 year degree, and so they're kind of in the wind, and there's no accountability, none, right, across our broader education system around that.
I was shocked. I think it was last week or the week before, that the valedictorian graduating from high school in the city of Hartford sued either the school or the city because she couldn't read. And she was the valedictorian, and so she brought a lawsuit to say, how could this possibly happen? You're graduating with me, I've got the highest grade average of my class, but I can't read. That says more about our education system, than anything. We really are not doing the right thing. We are not teaching basics. We are promoting students along who are not becoming proficient. I mean, I'm sure every educator in this room knows that by 3rd grade, you have to know how to read. Up until then, you're learning to read. But after 3rd grade, you're reading to learn. And if you cannot read from 3rd grade on, and you can't be proficient in reading, you cannot be successful in your other courses, in your other studies. And so we have to teach kids to read. Are we going back to basics? I visited a couple of charter schools in Florida a couple of weeks ago, and they were classical schools, and they were back to teaching phonics in their schools, and back to teaching more of kind of rote memorization and math, kind of the way I grew up reading and learning math, and there's some things you'll never forget, and that's your times tables. So I think we have to focus on some of those things that are kind of back to basics while we integrate our technology to make sure that we are not leaving these kids behind. And that's just the basics of education as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think, like it or not, we have to integrate technology. Because the World Economic Forum declared this year that the end of the industrial age has occurred, or industrial revolution has occurred, and we've entered now the intelligence age driven by rapid advancements in AI. There's a lot of conversations here about AI, quantum computing, and blockchain. And it's, as you know, placing a high demand on skill requirements, training, and preparation. And on the other side of all this, our corporations are saying there's a massive talent gap. So this is really, really important.
I'm such a strong proponent, and I know our time is winding down, but I'm such a strong proponent of workforce education in our schools, that we need, starting in middle schools, high schools, to even train towards our skills. Because we have to change our cultural thought process, that this is not just default education for those who might not can make it to college. I'm a big fan of any student who can have the opportunity, wants to go to college, and needs college for their career, doctors, lawyers, engineers, whatever that is. But there are many, many wonderful occupations that do not need a college degree, and I think we should be encouraging those students in that career development. I also like dual credits. You could be in high school and you could be taking a couple of courses that would count in a community college or towards a regular college that's skill-based. We need engineers. Yes, we definitely need engineers. We need all of our STEM courses, but we need plumbers. We need electricians. We need HVAC folks, and they can make an incredible living and really contribute to our economy. And we can't ignore them, and we have to encourage them and make sure that we are developing education across every single level to the economic growth and success of our country and for those individuals.
That's great. Well, we really appreciate you being here today, Madam Secretary. One of the things I know that's always been a part of all political campaigns, those short, stubby little lines that tend to be there. You know, we've heard about Make America Great Again. I think this one should be about putting students first. So if you don't mind letting the president know that that's the new tagline. We'd like to put students first, and we're hoping that you'll be on board with that. I think you will. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. For all of us that are tuning in online, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back at the lunch program at noon.